Have you ever wondered if the official stories we've been told are the full truth? What if, behind the most catastrophic events in modern history, there's a deeper, more sinister story that's been hidden, one that could change everything you think you know? Imagine a former congressman, a respected political figure, who suddenly finds himself at the center of a scandal, his career destroyed, his life shattered, simply because he dared ask the questions that no one else would. Curt Weldon, a man who was once on track to be a leading voice in American politics, became the target of a campaign designed to silence him. But what was it that made him a target in the first place? What was so dangerous about the truth he was trying to expose? Weldon was not just any politician. He had been uncovering something huge, something that had the power to unravel the official story of 9/11, the very foundation of the war on terror. He had come across intelligence that could have stopped the attacks before they happened. But when the time came to act on this information, it was buried. The FBI ignored it. The military officers who tried to share their findings were blocked. But here's where it gets even more bizarre. When Weldon tried to bring this to light, his political enemies didn't just ignore it, they destroyed his career. His opponent, Joe Sestak, seized on the opportunity, and suddenly the media was running with stories of corruption, stories that weren't true. But what's the connection to 9/11? Why was the truth about Able Danger so dangerous? And why did the powers that be want Curt Weldon to shut up? This is where it starts to get real. You see, Able Danger wasn't just some small, inconsequential program. It was the key to understanding why 9/11 happened. The US government knew about the threats long before the attacks, but instead of taking action, they allowed it to happen. The question is, why? We were left with our jaws hanging after hearing this. We always believed the story, the narrative that 9/11 was an unpredictable tragedy. But could it be that the very people tasked with protecting us were actually complicit in letting it happen? Could there be a hidden agenda at play? And if this was the case, what other truths have been deliberately concealed from the public? Then, just when you think it couldn't get worse, Weldon drops a bombshell that leaves us questioning everything we've been told. Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the attacks, he wasn't hiding in Afghanistan. No, he was sitting comfortably in Iran, protected by some of the same figures who would later be killed by US forces. But it wasn't just about hiding him. It was part of a bigger plan. Bin Laden was kept alive to serve as a figurehead, a tool for justifying the wars that followed. This revelation hit us hard. We'd always been told that bin Laden was the ultimate enemy, the driving force behind the chaos. But what if he wasn't the monster we thought? What if, in reality, he was just another pawn in a much larger game? We sat back, stunned. The wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, they didn't just happen by chance. They were part of a carefully orchestrated agenda, a narrative built on lies and half-truths. And the more we learned, the more we realized how little we knew. But wait, there's more. The collapse of Building 7, the third tower that fell on 9/11 without being hit by a plane. We've all seen the footage, the dramatic images, but have you ever wondered why it fell in perfect symmetry, as though it were brought down intentionally? Firefighters at the scene testified that the fires were manageable and they never expected the building to collapse. Yet somehow, it did. Controlled demolition? No one could explain it. And the 9/11 Commission? They brushed it aside, just like they brushed aside the testimonies of those who had tried to warn them. This is when the narrative starts to fall apart. As viewers, we were left with one unshakable thought. How can we trust anything we've been told about 9/11 when the pieces don't fit? Why did the authorities choose to ignore the evidence? And why did they silence the very people who could have exposed the truth? And this is where Curt Weldon's personal sacrifice hits home. He didn't just lose his political career, he lost everything. His reputation, his life's work, all destroyed because he refused to stop searching for the truth. But why? Why risk it all? Because as he says, the truth needed to come out. The world needed to know what had really happened, and the powers that be knew that if the truth came out, it would destroy everything they had built. It would reveal the truth about 9/11. The truth that, once exposed, would never be ignored again. As we listen to Curt's journey, we're left with more questions than answers. How many others have been silenced like him? How many people have lost their careers, their reputations, and their lives just for speaking out? It makes you wonder, how many uncomfortable truths are we ignoring simply because the answers are too dangerous to confront? But what if Curt Weldon's story is the first step? What if, by daring to ask the tough questions, we can begin to uncover the real truth behind 9/11 and everything that followed? Weldon's fight isn't just about exposing the past, it's about demanding transparency in the present and the future. It's about saying no to the lies and no to the cover ups. And as we reflect on his story, we realize that maybe the most dangerous thing of all isn't the truth itself, but our willingness to accept the narrative we've been fed without ever questioning it. The question is, how far are we willing to go to find the truth, even if it shatters everything we've ever believed? Curt Weldon has shown us the power of one person's voice against the forces that seek to silence it. And as we listen, we must ask ourselves, what truth are we still missing? What are we still willing to ignore just to keep the world as we know it intact? It's time for the truth. It's time for transparency. And it's time for us all to start asking the hard questions.